You're gonna be swinging a lot more hammers and building a lot more homes very soon, because we have a Canada First plan that is going to get it done and bring it home. But unfortunately, I have to begin with some bad news. In nearby Ajax, a Muslim woman was recently attacked at the Ajax library. She was totally innocent, and she was attacked by a monster, a nasty perpetrator who once again had been released. This is a person who had been released after threatening people with a machete, but after she pleaded guilty, she was sentenced not to jail, but probation. This is the increasingly common story after the lost Liberal decade of crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder in our streets. Electing the Liberals to a fourth term in power will only mean that crime and chaos will run rampant here and everywhere across the country. What we need is a government that puts law-abiding Canadians first for a change by making sure that repeat offenders become permanently ineligible for bail, probation, parole, or house arrest. It will be jail, not bail. Jail, not bail when I'm Prime Minister. Yeah, you agree with that? Yeah. Absolutely. And thank you very much to the people of Vaughan, great people in this wonderful community. I want to thank George and Nicole, who are legends in the home building industry, who are hosting us today in their wonderful development. This community has so much potential that has so far, though, been unrealized because of the lost Liberal decade that has doubled housing costs. I want to talk today about my plan to change this and to bring home safety and affordability to communities just like this one. Now, before I do that, though, I want to just say that I want to challenge Mark Carney to show up for the debate at TVA in Quebec. He's running away and hiding because he believes that he's too weak to defend the lost Liberal decade or explain why he thinks Liberals deserve a fourth term. Let's have a debate in French where we put together the choice. Either a fourth Liberal term after costs and crime have gone up and our economy has gone down under the American thumb, or putting Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government that will build the homes. I'll even pay Mr. Carney's fee so that he can show up. We'll take that excuse away from him. Conservatives will even pay the fee to bring him out if he's not afraid. And by the way, if he is afraid to have the debate, how is he going to have the courage to stand up against Donald Trump? It's going to take someone who's strong enough to do that. And if he's not afraid, then he'll show up at that debate. I'm not afraid, and I'm ready to enjoy that debate with him. And one of the things we will be debating is the Liberal housing crisis. Because after the lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled. They've risen faster than in any other G7 country. Toronto and Vancouver are now the most expensive housing markets in all of North America, worse than New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Seattle. In fact, many cities that have more income, more people, and less land have much more affordable homes. Before the lost Liberal decade, it took 25 years to pay off a mortgage. Now in Toronto, it takes 29 years to save up for a down payment. Before the Liberal lost decade, the average house price in Canada was $450,000, an almost laughably small sum of money. That was when I was housing minister, and those were the results we have. But today, if you live in Vancouver, you need to earn $250,000 to get qualified to buy the average house. Here in Toronto, it's $220,000. Liberals caused the housing crisis by inflating demand with out-of-control immigration and money printing, and blocking supply with taxes and bureaucracy that stop home builders. Now, it's very interesting that the worst housing inflation of the lost Liberal decade happened after Mark Carney became Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. It was in 2020 when that began, and the housing costs in the 2 years after Carney took over as the economic advisor went from $533,000 to $835,000. And in case there's any doubt about this, let me quote from the Financial Post headline in 2017. Canada's housing bubble can be traced back to Mark Carney and his bias for easy money policy. It's not just the Financial Post, it's London's Daily Telegraph, which comments on Mark Carney's time as the governor there, where he caused a housing crisis in that country. They said that he had the, quote, reverse Midas touch. The former, quote, the former governor of the Bank of England has left a trail of destruction behind his glossy jobs. The Telegraph also reported that just as he did when he kick-started the housing crisis in Canada, Mr. Carney was once again printed too much money in the wake of the financial crisis. And as housing prices ballooned, economists criticized him for a, quote, missed opportunity to make homes more affordable. Quoting again the Telegraph, by the time he left office, Carney had created a mess which his successors have struggled to clean up. But Carney wasn't finished wrecking the housing market at that point. He brought his knack for inflating housing costs to Brookfield. In a report by the Office of the Canadian Federal Housing Advocate from 2022, Brookfield was criticized as being one of the leading North American companies engaged in predatory financialization of the real estate market. This is when a giant corporation like Brookfield buys up rental properties, makes a few cosmetic changes, and then raises rents substantially with the knowledge that residents cannot move and will be forced to absorb the costs. He's still invested in Brookfield, which profits from predatory financialization. How is Mark Carney ever going to combat greedy corporations ripping off our working class when he's profiting from it and when he still has those investments knowingly? That's why it's time for Mr. Carney to come clean about all of his investments, reveal his conflicts, which he admits that he has. And instead, we need a Prime Minister who will stand up for the Canadian people and not for those who profit off of inflation. After the lost Liberal decade, for the first time in the history, the dream of home ownership is lost for a generation, at least lost for now. In BC and Ontario, the cost of new home, 30% of the cost of a new home, though, is just taxes. More money for a new home goes to bureaucrats in office buildings than goes to these builders who actually build the homes. It's incredible. And the people who build the homes cannot afford to live in them. That is fundamentally unjust, and it will only get worse with a fourth Liberal term. And home building is down. Toronto construction was down 38% last year. Vancouver down 16%. Ottawa down 21%. Winnipeg down 7%. And it's not going to get better after the fourth term. Today, the worst immigration minister in the history of the country, who also happens to be the worst housing minister in the history of the country, Sean Fraser, announced that after 10 years helping bring about the lost Liberal decade, he will be running again for Mark Carney. And so you're going to have the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal strategists, making the same Liberal promises as they did to bring about the housing crisis if they're elected for a fourth term. Mr. Fraser was the one that brought the Century Initiative into immigration policy, a policy designed to increase our population to 100 million. With this massive uncontrolled population growth, he helped contribute to creating this crisis in the first place, and now Mark Carney and the Liberals say that he should be back. Now, the reason all of this is the reason why I announced about 7 or 8 months ago that a Conservative government would put our country first by eliminating GST on all homes up to $1 million. I then brought that idea to the House of Commons in a motion, and 100% of Liberal MPs voted against it. They unanimously opposed the idea, and they could have done it. They could have implemented it. Mr. Carney even could have implemented it last week before he called the election. They did not. If they're elected to a fourth term, they will never do it. But the problem has gotten even worse since I made that announcement. Now, $1 million is not enough to get the average home in many markets. It's almost surreal, isn't it? You know, 10 years ago, $1 million would have got you a castle on a mountain overlooking a valley of gold. 10 years ago, a $1 million home was for the extremely rich. Now, these homes like this, often go for more than $1 million. It is astonishing. It's almost hallucinogenic how badly the Liberals have destroyed our housing market, and with it, the Canadian promise. But we have to adapt. As Liberals make problems worse, Conservatives push further to make things better. And that's why, in acknowledging the Liberal housing crisis has worsened since October, I'm announcing that a new Conservative government will put Canada first by taking GST, the federal sales tax, off of all homes under $1.3 million. We will axe the tax so that every Canadian can buy a new home tax-free. That will spark 360,000 extra homes every single year, boost our GDP by $2.5 billion, create tens of thousands of jobs for our builders right behind me, and also for our forestry workers who will get back out into our forests, harvesting our wonderful lumbers, turning towering timbers into 2x4s that will uphold these wonderful homes. We'll build Canadian homes with Canadian lumber, Canadian trades workers doing the job. This will mean a savings of up to $65,000 on a new home, or $3,000 less in annualized mortgage payments. Real savings for Canadians will be also compounded as we incentivize municipalities to free up land, speed up permits, and cut development charges to build 15% more per year. We will sell off 15% of federal buildings and land to build homes. We will reject the Liberal Century Initiative that would increase our population to 100 million. And instead, we will cap immigration so that population growth never exceeds the growth in the housing stock. We will also cut income taxes by 15% so that the average working family has an extra $2,000 to make their mortgage payments and afford a home. After a lost Liberal decade, with costs and crime up and our economy down under the American thumb, Canada cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. It is time for us to put Canada first for a change, with a new Conservative government that will remove gatekeepers, cut taxes, build homes, build millions of homes, a government that will axe taxes, build homes, unleash resources, stop crime, and bring home the jobs that the Liberals sent south to Trump. We will stand up to the American president from a position of strength. More important than anything, we will bring home the Canadian promise. We will once again make this a country where hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful home on a safe street protected by brave troops under a proud flag. Canada first. Let's bring it home. Yeah. Thank you.